Hi again, and thank you for joining us today. I interviewed Kory Mackinnon, who is not only a real estate investor, an author, a speaker, and a real estate coach, but also just in general, a good person who's looking to encourage others to help people grow and scale their businesses. We talked about several things, but most importantly, we covered about having the right mindset, about the right skill set, branding, and systems to help you grow and become more seasoned and more accomplished investors. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Kory, as some of you guys know, he does a great job with having a great social media presence. He's been able to accomplish a lot in his career. He's been around for a long time investing in real estate based out of Sarnia, Ontario. So enjoy. And just a reminder, if you are looking into getting your hands on some rental properties, or if you don't want to be completely involved, you don't want to lead the charge on that type of deal, you can reach out to me and we can have a conversation about it. Just go to www.welloff.ca, book a call. There's an opportunity to do so straight on the website, and I look forward to chatting with you. Once again, enjoy. Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm here with Kory Mackinnon, who is not only a real estate investor, also a speaker, a real estate coach, and an author. He's written the book, or actually, I believe he's working on the book called Inside the Mind of a Millionaire Real Estate Investor. The cool thing about Kory is that he's kind of had his opportunity to work on several different things in terms of real estate investing. He's wholesaled, joint ventured, he's done some flips. He repurposed land, developed buildings, uses the BRRRR strategy. And in addition to that, something really interesting about him is that he started out, actually, he bought his first property at 30 years old, which a lot of people might consider kind of late. I know a lot of people are afraid that they might be too old to get started, but Kory is obviously an example of somebody who's been able to start a bit later and succeed and do very well. So Kory, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, was all my information accurate, or was I off a little bit somewhere?
Oh no, man, it's good. Like I've been doing this for 15 years now, and
Yeah.
14 years, I guess, and done a lot of different strategies. And I think it's just a natural evolution once somebody has got a good grasp on something. Is to like, hey, I'm always reaching for more. I'm always trying to strive to be better, and expand my horizons. So
awesome. All right. Well, the way I usually start here is by asking you a little bit about your childhood. If you can tell me where you grew up and some fond memories.
Sure. So born and raised in Sarnia, Ontario. And for people who don't know Sarnia, Ontario, it's a border city to Michigan. And grew up in a, like single income family. My dad was a shift worker at Sarnia is known for a lot of refinery work. So my father worked in the refineries or the plants in town. And being a shift worker, we never really knew when dad was going to be sleeping or when he was going to be awake. But didn't come from a lot. I mean, my father came from a family of 8 kids. I think he left the house at 17 or 18. So literally because there was just so much more space anywhere except for my grandparents. I think it was like a 600 or 700 square foot house with 10 people in it. That's pretty packed. So, but what my parents did teach me is to definitely be opportunistic. If we didn't have a lot going on, like my parents had that talk with me when I was probably 10 years old. This was right when pop culture was starting to come out. And it's funny, I've been watching the Michael Jordan documentary there, The Last Dance. And just brings back the memories of kids in class having these, $125 sneakers back in like the mid 80s. Right. And that was a huge thing. I mean, you might as well call them $400 sneakers now, which are just crazy. And my parents had the talk with me and just said, look, we'll provide you with the basics. And the basics might be hand-me-downs. It might be the buy-away, thrift shop type stuff, or we might even make your clothes, which my mom did sew clothes and was a seamstress and that sort of thing. But if you want anything more than that, you're going to have to go out and figure it out. There's these things called, part-time jobs and, side hustles. Back then. It wasn't even called side hustle, but it's just like, you got to go figure it out and go make some scratch. So, got a paper route in grade, gosh, I think it was grade 4 or 5. And I tripled the size of the route, which seemed genius at the time. Like that's what, Warren Buffett did when he was young, except Warren was way smarter than me. He hired his friends to actually go deliver the papers and he just collected all the profits. So, but having your radar turn on at a young age, I think is important. to be able to look for opportunities. Like, we're visual creatures, right? And we think in pictures. So when you know what an opportunity looks like in your mind and you make that connection, that's huge. So, I started working. I tell people when I retired from corporate at 37, I'd already been working for like over 25 years. So I deserved to have a retirement at that point. So,
Yeah.
so those are some of my childhood memories. I mean, always wasn't afraid at a young age to walk the path less chosen. I chose different sports, hung out with different kinds of people. I got into a sport of weightlifting at a very young age when everybody thought it was what are you, a bodybuilder or a wrestler, or, thank goodness now for CrossFit that the sport's actually gotten a lot more exposure. I did golf at a young age. That was one of my first sports. Did track and field, but I did the odd events, right? I did shot put, discus, javelin, sprints and relays and all that kind of stuff, right? When people were doing different things. So playing the more typical Canadian sports like hockey and football, baseball, whatever it might be.
Right. Well, that's awesome. So I was just curious, did you end up getting a pair of Jordans then?
I did not. No. So I've always been a value guy, and I chose to put my money to things that, I remember my parents thought I was crazy, but in grade 6, I went and spent like $600 on a road bike, just like one of these bikes. But to me, that was freedom. Those were like my wheels. I could go anywhere. And that was back when, you weren't as concerned about, hey, where are your kids and what are they doing? It's like, hey, you got a watch on, great. Be home at this time or else it's not going to be good. So you just respected that. And you were always home by whatever the time was supposed to be. And, I appreciate, nicer things in life. But I don't always want to just be buying the best, because that's obviously not a good wealth choice either, to be spending the majority of your income on something that's not going to do much at all for you, except for make you look great in front of people that probably don't care anyway. So,
yeah, for sure. So we'll get into the rest of your real estate story, but I also wanted to mention something. When I was in high school, I remember watching this documentary about violence, like on the southern border of Ontario and like the Windsor area, whatever, close to the Michigan border. And they were saying that there were some shootings that happened, but the majority of them were from people that came from Michigan and had a gun on them and shot somebody in Canada. So did you ever experience anything like that, just out of curiosity?
I never experienced that, but I mean, being when you're young and you're going out to the bars and clubs and whatnot, it was you could tell who was local and who came over the border, right? Because the drinking age in Canada was lower. So hey, why not come over and have fun 2 years before you can do it over in the United States? And it just obviously people from Michigan have a bit of a different look and a bit of a different vibe. And but for the most part, they were there just to have a good time and stuff. But in every group, there's always going to be people that want to cause trouble or whatever. So I never directly, was that close to it, but it was out there, and it was, Windsor's a much bigger city, probably 4 or 5 times bigger than Sarnia. So definitely probably a bigger thing down there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was just curious. It has nothing to do with anything. Just wondering. All
No
right.
worries.
So let's talk about your journey. So at 30 years old, were you working at that time? You had a corporate position?
Yeah. So I was a vice president, sort of like a C-level position in a large student franchise company here in Canada. We're actually one of the biggest painting companies, service providers in the nation for painting. And it was something I actually got into in college. So I went to school for sports and rec admin because I was a national level athlete. And, back then there was grade 13 and stuff like that. And I wasn't really sure what to do. I think it's very common for young people not to know their purpose yet. So for me, I knew what I was good at and what I wasn't good at. And I just never really got caught up in the whole university vibe. I know university is more like the second high school now, but 20 years ago, it was still a bit more of a privileged thing to go to university. It was a bigger price ticket and moving away from home and all those different things. So my sister actually went to university and dropped out. So that also didn't help my case when I was talking to my parents about it. Very good at school. I looked at school as like a competition, but I also I was just like, well, why am I doing, grade 13 algebra and figuring all these things that maybe only NASA people are going to use, right? So I wanted something a lot more practical. Went to a local college. It was half sports and rec admin and half business. So I really fell in love with business because I'd already been running businesses since I was a young child. I was tutoring, I was delivering newspapers, all those different things, cutting grass and shoveling snow. So for me, that really appealed to me. And then I got my chance when I was 19 years old. I saw an ad in the newspaper saying Student Works Painting now hiring for franchisees, no experience necessary, must have a driver's license, must have an extreme work ethic. And for me, that really spoke to me, because who at a young age that's, an achiever wouldn't want to be a manager? And I know I was working other part-time jobs, and lots of times they flat out tell you, like, you're not a good investment for us to train you as a manager, maybe unless you're at McDonald's or something like that. But when you're working with more adults, I was working at Kmart at the time, and Sears, they just say, hey, flat out, you're not a great investment, because you're going to leave. You're going to end up, getting other bigger, greater opportunities. You're going to leave us. So at the age of 19, when I saw be your own manager, I was like, man, sign me up for that. And I went on to be a franchisee for 2 years. I moved up in the company to the point where within, 4 or 5 years, I was literally writing my own job description for vice president of the company, and stayed there for almost 17 years. So, and I still go back and speak to the organization. I think it's a great organization. It's like junior achievement, but for university kids. And I think entrepreneurship is definitely something that's missing in our society, and it definitely will make our society greater than it is right now. Unfortunately, everybody's hurting. We're going through coronavirus right now, right? But small businesses is really, people want that more artisan, more small business feel to things, even more than ever nowadays.
I agree. And I think those companies like the one you worked at, those are really good to provide certain skills that you wouldn't get in school, or that you wouldn't get from just talking to people or whatnot. I had a similar experience with vector marketing. I don't know if you're familiar with Cutco knives.
I am.
Yeah.
I've bought many Vector knives, and some of our franchisees used to sell Vector, and they did very well. And whenever we heard that somebody had Vector experience, we're like, hey, if you can sell expensive, and they're still very, very good quality knives.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had more of them. But if you can learn how to sell higher price point things at a young age, man, the world opens up for you.
For sure. And the skills that you learn from that, you'll never lose. They're just, you can use them in so many different ways. It's pretty awesome.
Exactly. Well,
So
hey, man, learning things about you here too. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about your shift going from basically working for a company to owning real estate and starting to
Sure.
build your wealth and getting into that crazy world.
Definitely. Well, I was exposed to real estate at a young age. So my dad, like the first house I remember growing up in, was right at the end of the school field. So literally, like I literally just had to walk out the front door and turn the corner, and I was in the school field, and had a couple 100-yard walk to school, which was great. That was actually a duplex. So that place came with a little bachelor apartment in the upper attic of the house. And her name was Mrs. DeTaylor. I still remember. And she didn't really come out a whole lot. She was in her 70s. She'd only come out really to grocery shop and stuff like that. And we were just like, it became our new normal, right? I would just ask my dad, hey, who's that? Like, that's the tenant. That's the lady that lives upstairs, and she pays us $35 a month or $50 a month or whatever it was. It was way under market value even back then. But back then, the lease was literally grandfathered into the house. Like we had to ride that out until, she passed away. So that's just what it was. And so I got exposed to that at a young age. My dad dabbled in real estate. I think he even had a second property at one point, and but never really educated himself. There wasn't really means to do that back in the 80s either, 70s and 80s. I mean, what books were written on real estate back then? Not really anything. So did the best he could with the knowledge he had at the time. And when I was in the last year of college, I was working a co-op at a gym because I thought I wanted to own a gym someday. And one of my coworkers was like, Kory, man, you got to read this book. It's amazing. And he also had a very entrepreneurial mindset as well, Brad. So, he showed me the copy, and I was like, man, I'm going to go to the bookstore today and get it. Right. So I got a copy of it, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I think I may have already read The Wealthy Barber at the time, because Wealthy Barber came out earlier. And that was more of the first book on, how to house hack and build wealth and save. So read these two books, and they just seemed to make a lot of sense to me. And as I was working as a franchisee in Student Works Painting, I saw my district manager. He was house hacking. So he had a duplex in Waterloo. It was like 4 bedrooms up and 2 bedrooms down. And he was like living for free and making money at the time, cash flowing. So I was like, wow, if Chuck can do this, I've always been striving to, be better than my mentors in some category, way, shape, or form. So I've just kind of set my eyes on, like, I can do this too. This is within my reach, and I'm just going to start doing it. So now the only thing was when I started looking for houses, this was my first year in my job where I got promoted. So I got promoted to an area manager, and typically area managers at the time were making 55 to 65,000 a year, sometimes more. So I was like, hey, this is awesome. This is a great first job out of college. And I started spending, that way as if I had already made the money, which is a big mistake. Live like a student as long as you can, because that's how you get ahead at a young age, and time is one of the biggest things that you have on your side. So I started spending, and then I missed a credit card payment. So I was playing the game of like, okay, well, I'll just pull from this credit card to pay for that one. And we have 3 credit cards, and you're working 80 hours a week. Sometimes you miss something. And that scratch stayed on my credit score for 5 years. And I was very stubborn at the time. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to pay an extra half point or an extra percent on a mortgage payment, because I started looking when I was 25 or 26 for an income property. So I basically just found a way to house hack even when I was without owning the house. So we got a place with my friends that would have moved in with me when I was looking for a duplex or a triplex or something like that. We found a 2-bedroom, 2 living room apartment in London, Ontario. And I turned one of the living rooms into my bedroom. So we got this cheaper rent. I was kind of house hacking, almost living for free back then, because I didn't really have an official bedroom. My bedroom was like some China walls that I put up, and lived there for 4 or 5 years. And then one of my employees said, "Hey, Kory, there's a for sale sign on the place that you're renting at." And I had a good banter going with the landlord at the time. If he ever wanted to sell, I was like, "Hey, I'm very interested. I want to get into something like this." And he kind of showed me that next level of, he had about 20 properties and 50 doors. And I learned a lot from Mark as well. And, I was just surprised to see the sign on the lawn, but, they were fishing for a big price. They didn't get it. He had a business partner. His business partner wanted to put it on the market and see what they could get for it. And it kept falling apart on inspection. There was a little bit of knob and tube and a little bit of galvanized plumbing and an asbestos roof, a tiled roof at the time. So those were deal breakers when they were asking for full price. So we made a side deal, and I just said, "Look, if you take care of all those things and give me a price reduction, I'll buy it privately from you." And that's what we did, and got in my first deal was actually a 6-plex. I tell people I learned a lot on that deal, and it made all my other deals easier after that. It's kind of like doing an ultra marathon, or a marathon is your first running race as opposed to just a 5K. Anybody can go out and run a 5K, but not everybody can run one of these big races, especially back in 2005, when literally the internet was really just used for email and some web surfing. There wasn't the depth of knowledge in podcasts like this, which are fantastic, for people to learn on.
Okay, that's awesome.
So that's my long answer how I got started. So just started doing the BRRRR. So I saw my mentor BRRRRing properties, and I started doing that too. And at the time, I'd take 2 or 3 years to kind of get through them, because I was making good money in my day job, using that for the down payments, and sometimes the BRRRR money for the down payment when I did a refi. But got to a point after 6-7 years where didn't have to be working for a day job anymore.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. You were able to transform your life pretty much by just making a few decisions and getting help from your mentor, from your coaches, whoever you chose to work with. So I do want to talk a little bit about that too, because you cover, or you have a couple different pillars in your business, one of them being as a coach.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit, because obviously now you're much further ahead. I'm sure you own a lot more than a 6-plex now at this point in your career.
Yes.
How are you helping people today with your coaching? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. And I realized at a young age that my biggest mission in life, because I've been through certain workshops and whatnot where they literally get you to go back and try to remember your first thoughts that you can remember way back in the day. And mine were of being a leader and not being afraid to walk the path that other people could walk in and should walk in. Because I do believe as a society, if we're all programmed to do the same thing, it's going to be like lemmings walking off a cliff. So I've always been in that position where, my talents came out at a young age. I started getting approached in grade school to be a tutor and to help people learn, because not everybody can learn in just one way, which is typically what they try to teach you in the school system. And it's not easy. I'm married to a high school teacher, and, with the class sizes and everything else, it's very difficult to work with people one-on-one. But at the end of the day, the best teachers are the ones that can shift and pivot and, work with people in different ways to help, either take a complicated task or idea and make it a lot simpler for them to understand. So, for me, my mission in life is to be a financial leader in the world and to love, support, and encourage other people to step up and do the same. And that's not just giving them fish, right? This is like teaching them how to go fish, how to find the fishing rods, and how to actually stand on their own 2 feet and do this, for a lifetime of achievement. So that's what I do. It's something that really fills me up. It doesn't feel like work. And I love working with motivated people that are ready to take, their investing, career and portfolio to a whole other level. And, typically going from like 1 to 6 to 10 to 12 properties. I mean, that changes your life. The first property will change your life a little bit, but when you learn how to really start to scale up, and make this more of a full-time venture, that's exciting. When you can go and live your life's passions and what you really want to do. I like real estate. I like business. But I also like to do a lot of other things in life, as I'm sure you do as well. Mm-hmm. So real estate is really a means to an end for you to actually be able to live your life on a fuller, bigger playing field.
For sure. And I've spoken to some of your students. Sometimes I notice that people are starting to purchase a lot of properties, and I'm just curious. I ask them, like, how are you doing it? And a couple times I've heard them say, I'm working with a coach, Kory. So I was just, while I was speaking to them, I noticed that they were really focused on having a social media presence. They were focused on doing podcasts, getting their name out there, creating this investor image to that's what I gather. Can you speak to that a little bit? Explain if that's accurate and why you go down that path?
Sure. And like I mentioned before, everybody can get their first property. It's not difficult. It might be difficult to go find an amazing deal and have a home run right out of the gates, which I'd say, hey, look, go get a single or double at first. Just make sure the property is going to make some money and you're not going to lose money, and it's in a good neighborhood and whatnot. Now, when you really want to scale your business, that's when you have to, and real estate is very similar to any other business, right? So you need to put different measures in place to make sure that you're going to succeed. And first of all, I want to make sure that people have the right mindset. The right mindset for investing is very, very important. A lot of people don't realize that, being uncomfortable and getting out of your comfort zone is so critical. It's so important. It's actually one of the highest needs, way above, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Usually when I speak on stages, I talk about this, but the quick 1-minute version is that, above food, shelter, procreation, all that sort of stuff, warmth, water, we have comfort. And when people are okay with being uncomfortable, that's when they're going to be able to get more in life of what they're looking for. Because anything in life worth having is going to take some work, effort, and trading those different things, right? Those are actually currency. So yes, mindset's very important. People need to know why they're doing this, what they want, and why that's important to them. Too many people get stuck on the hows, right? Then they need to figure out their strategy, because there's lots of different strategies in real estate. I like the BRRRR. I think it's a great strategy. There's also other great strategies out there, like rent to own and short-term rentals are fantastic as well. Development are all great. And then they have to focus on skill set. So skill set comes under a lot of different things. Okay. Like under skill set could be raising money or learning how to negotiate or finding deals, getting your deal flow going. Okay. So those are skill sets. Branding, I'd say is a skill set, but it's also a separate category in itself. It's funny. I changed my profile picture. Gosh, I think it's like 3 years ago now, of me holding all these keys, right? Mm-hmm. Literally I get, dozens of people reaching out to me on social media, adding me on Facebook, total strangers. I don't know who they are, just because they see the picture and they're like, that's a pretty boss picture. I guess that person might know what they're talking about. Okay. So branding is very important. And then, once you start to go into getting more lead flow and growing your portfolio, you need to have systems in place. If you don't have systems in place, you'll literally implode upon yourself. It's going to be your weakest link by far. Right. And then there's going to be, leveraging and scaling your business and improving, right? A lot of people just don't know the actual proper process to improve something. That's when you do something, you review it, make some changes to improve it, and just keep repeating that cycle. Do, review, improve, repeat. A lot of people will do, review, stop.
Right.
Because they get frustrated or they don't have anybody in their corner. So by all means, like a lot of people, if you want to go somewhere that you've never been before, you probably need to interact with people that you've never interacted with before. People have been there before you, right? If I'm whenever I've gone to climb a mountain or do a big hike, I always hire a tour guide, a guide to take me where I am. And I guess I just learned this at a young age. I started training, at the age of 12 for weightlifting, and I was able to get to the national level in 4 years because I had an amazing coach. He was like literally been to 2 Olympics, Commonwealth Games, Pan American Games. So in my brain at a young age, I just said, like, look, it doesn't make sense me struggling to try to figure it out on my own. Obviously, I think everybody should try to figure things out on their own and not just like put their hand up and message their entire audience. So how do you do this? Because I don't know how. It's great to have a connection, a network like that for help. But I think it's important, if you want to get things done quicker, bigger, better, faster, then hey, go and link arms with people who have been there before. Maybe they're half generation ahead of you. Maybe they're not. We were just chatting earlier before this started about, I actually hired a mentor that was younger than me, 10 years younger, because he'd written 8 books and I wanted to write a book. So, hey, I don't have any pride around that. If they've done what I want to do and they're brilliant at it, I'm going to go work with them and figure it out. Mm-hmm. And there's free advice and there's also paid advice, and they both have their merits. And everybody's time is valuable. So if you want to learn from someone who's been to where you want to be and their time is valuable, then hey, if there's a fee to work with them and it's reasonable, then it's a good fit for you personality wise, and then go for it.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. We covered a lot here. I just wanted to kind of summarize what we discussed, but correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like there's kind of 4 things to focus on in terms of real estate career, investing career. There would be mindset, skill set, branding, and systems. Would you agree?
Those are some of the major ones, and you could even say that social media in this day and age might want to even have its own category. It's interesting. I saw these, Brady and Christy talking from BK Investing, and somebody in the audience said, "Hey, what's the best 3 uses of your time?" And number 1 was social media. It's like, look, that's just how we're connected. It's the new way of getting things done. Everybody has an opportunity, just like a podcast or a YouTube channel, Facebook and Instagram, to have their own, really TV show. And it's, people want information. People want to be entertained. People want real content. And they appreciate people that are actually going through the journey. Mm-hmm. I think it's so important. And that's actually something that Stefan Aarnio shared with me too. I was trying to post relevant content 10 years ago when people were posting about, oh, hey, here's a picture of my sandwich. Mm-hmm. Here's my dog. Here's my friend hungover. I'm just like, you know what? I'm trying to make a difference when people weren't really ready for that. So I kind of tuned out, and I was only posting like once a month. But he said, look, Kory, you're actually really doing this. You're doing this on a big scale. You're one of the biggest people in the province that are doing real estate, if not the country. You got to share the journey more. I said, really? People want to see me walking around on Facebook Live talking about some of the stuff I do? And he's like, yes, people need that. People want that. So it's, I'm not afraid to share the journey. And, I hope other people here aren't afraid to share the journey too. I see what you're doing on social media. I think it's fantastic. And, people need more of this.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I do want to talk about Stefan as well. We just recently heard that he passed away from cancer. I know he was a mentor of yours, so I'd love to talk to you about that. But before we do, I just wanted to expand a little bit because of the importance of social media. Are you able to talk about some of the things that you think are essential, or some of the things that will really help you excel, assuming that these are some of the things you might share with some of your students? I call them students. I guess that's what they are, clients or whatever. Yeah,
no, I mean, call you what they want, but I think when it comes to social media, again, I'm self-taught. Not like I've taken social media courses, but I mean, I think it's not hard for people to model success. Go see what successful people are doing and model what they're doing. And if you don't understand all of it, the behind the scenes or the inner workings. I mean, if I wanted to start up a podcast, I'd say, hey, we need to talk, and I'm more than happy to pay you a consulting fee because you've already figured it out, man. Help make it easier for me so I don't have to struggle. But I believe some of the keys when it comes to social media is to be consistent. Okay, you can't just post and then not post and then post, not post. I mean, at least there has to be some level of consistency with the timing of the information, like the content you're putting out, and the just the message that you're trying to get out. And too many people are trying to be somebody else. Just be yourself, right? If people are going to want to be your JV partner or something like that, it's because they really resonate with you and what you're all about and the kinds of properties that you're getting into, and that you're a true blue kind of a person. So I think that's very important to be consistent. Be really clear with your message. Don't be talking about wanting to be a chef one day and this another day. I mean, like, I'm the healthy, wealthy dad. That's kind of like the theme that I've chosen. So sometimes I'm posting about the exercise I'm doing or the food I'm eating or the choices I make to make sure that I'm going to live a longer life, or at least that's the goal when it comes to health, because I do believe that health is one of your biggest wealths. Too many people earn all this money to be able to enjoy their life, and in turn they usually sacrifice their health, and then they spend their money to, it's just kind of like living life backwards. But I've always tried to put health first, and to me that's very important. So those are some of the basics. Just be yourself, be consistent, and don't be afraid to share. Get out of your comfort zone. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And probably 5 years ago I wouldn't have been as comfortable on a screen with you here, but as you get more screen time, you get more comfortable with it. So it's okay. Just be yourself.
Right. And I want to ask you, so when you are putting out all of this content, in your opinion, do people just approach you and sort of ask you for either to become clients of yours under the coaching program or JV partners, or do you have a call to action? And if so, how often do you ask for business, or do you ask for partners, or whatever it is that you're targeting?
Sure. Great question. And, I'm just a big believer of giving first. Okay. So the more you give, the more you shall receive. And, if anything, I need to give more. So, it's interesting. I went on a March break trip here right before COVID started. I was like, literally, okay, I haven't had a family trip in like a year. Let's get away. Let's even leave early. Let's beat the rush and get away 3-4 days early. So we started getting away, and then everything started breaking and we had to come back. I was literally scheduled to start working with, YouTube, some people that could film YouTube for me and start chopping it up and getting more video content out there, because I believe that's one of the better platforms out there. Yes, so that's getting a little bit lost in the question here, but
it's
I
a
do
call
believe
to action. So how often are you asking?
Sure. So I, just give, I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, right? So Gary just gives and gives and gives. And if you know what Gary's fee is, if you ever want to hire him, it's like 120 grand, maybe it's even more. That's what I heard, right? So a lot of people do is they'll get 10 people in a boardroom, they'll hire them for a day. Because I guess 12 grand times 10 isn't that bad. But I like my students to do the talking. I mean, if they're getting great results from it, it's like, hey, great, tell other people. Referrals are the best way for me to advertise. I don't do sponsored ads. I don't pump out a lot of information. I'll mention when I'm spending a day with one of my students or something like that, or hey, check out what some of my students are doing. But for me, it's a good income stream. I'm happy. I keep a full schedule with it. And, my purpose in life is to serve. And if people are ready to step up, I'm sure you've heard the saying, when the student's ready, the mentor will appear in their lives, right? So if people resonate with me and what I'm all about, that's fantastic. Let's grab a phone call and see if it's a good fit. Because there's definitely, it's not something for everybody. And I want to work with coachable people that when you show them the path of this is what you need to do, I want to make sure that the motivation is there and they're actually going to follow through. Because I don't want to be working with people that don't take action and don't follow through. Because really, what's the point? They'd be better off to spend their money somewhere else on a trip or vacation or something like that. So.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed, because I do follow you on Instagram, and you do put out a lot of content. Sometimes it's just personal stuff about your kids. Sometimes you share your experiences with current projects, real estate projects that you're working on. But very rarely have I seen you do anything like, hey, are you guys want my coaching program? Reach out to me. Or not to say that that's wrong, but there are some people that I follow where almost every single day they're promoting something.
Yes.
And you feel like your approach works well. You still get quite a few people that reach out to you, and I'm assuming that's because of word of mouth and the power of attraction rather than trying to pull people to, or trying to push something onto people. Is that right?
Definitely. And to work with me, it's a significant investment. And for me, I'm happy with how things have gone. It's been a multiple 6-figure venture over the past couple of years, many times over. And I am going to be putting together a digital program for people that want more of an entry level, like, hey, just I want to learn the fundamentals, or I want to get into my first deal. So I do believe there's a big need for that. And I'll probably mention that one a little bit more, just because maybe it needs to reach out to some more people and stuff like that. But for me, I've never wanted to be that needy, desperate person just provide as much value that you can. And it seems counterintuitive, like you got to give, and then eventually these things start to come back to you. But it really is true. And if people can't realize that there's roots growing underground, it's not easy to start something like that or to be, a high level coach, then they're probably in the wrong industry.
Right. Cool. Okay. So we touched on this a little bit. I want to ask you about Stefan. What was your relationship with him? And also you said that you've worked with him in the past and he's mentored you and with writing a book and whatnot. Can you kind of share what that experience was like?
Sure. So, I met Stefan about, around 4 years ago. We actually had similar mentors in common. So we were actually at a mastermind together. It was like a last minute thing. I think our mentor at the time, who was out in BC, had an extra spot in his schedule and wanted to do something fun. So he said, look, mastermind in 2 weeks down in Florida. And who wouldn't want to get away down to Florida and talk about real estate or business or what have you when we have some of the Canadian winters that we do up in Canada. So I said, hey, sign me up. The price point was very reasonable compared to his regular, consulting fee. So I went down and I had no idea who was going to be there. I just knew I wasn't going to be one-on-one. It might be, a couple people in the room and we can kind of cross-pollinate and learn from each other. And, there was Stefan, right? I think he was 28 or 29 at the time. He'd already written 2 books. I think he was working on his 3rd one. And just, seemed wise beyond his years at that age. And I think some of these iconic type people that end up either dropping out of college or university to pursue their dreams, they're just so brilliant. They have such a genius in them that just doing what we might feel like is on a high level for them, it's just like they figure it out very quickly. I get it. Got the t-shirt. I'm here to influence the world. And that was Stefan's vision, was to really, change the world. And, I saw that I wanted to give back more to society. He'd been an author many times over. He said, look, there's 2 lives in the world. There's a life before being an author. There's a life after you're an author. And trust me, there's a big difference. And even just promoting my journey to getting the book finished, it's been a 2-year thing. I didn't believe I was going to be having extra kids in the process and scaling a business. Like all these opportunities really started to come my way. It's amazing what happens when you are clear on what you want and you focus on it. I've in the second half of my real estate investing career, I've been doing more deals than ever. And it's all the work I've been doing, a decade ago has really come to fruition now, which is excellent. Plus the skill set and everything else is there. But, working with Stefan was great. He was definitely a very iconic person, very, very wise, and had a interesting and great way of coaching. And, people, I always say like, hey, either you like the guy or you didn't. There wasn't really any in between. But for the people that were closest to them, they understood that he had a big heart. He wanted to see people succeed, and poured into them, really. So he did 20 years worth of work in 10 years, which probably wasn't healthy for him. And unfortunately, cancer got him. And but he's left a huge legacy. So it just goes to show that, content is something that is a legacy. So, go out and create as much as you can, because when your kids get older, they're still going to be able to find this stuff and pull it up. And that is going to be your legacy, what you've left for them.
Would you say that that's one of the biggest things you got from him? That content is your legacy?
Just, the importance of sharing the journey. So the importance of sharing the journey, how to be, if you ever look up the hero's journey is what we all go through when we're striving for bigger things. And it makes a lot of sense. And we've all gone through the hero's journey, including yourself. And, to be able to articulate that on a stage, I've had to follow this guy on a speaking stage before. It wasn't easy, because he's literally hired some of the best speaking coaches in North America. And then he helped to share that with me too. I've been on his podcast, right after, Robert Kiyosaki and just some of these other giants, right? So it's like, I'm glad that I've met some of those people. He always brought great people into his training rooms as well. And some of my best friends now are the people I've met through the events that he's put on in the past, and will still put on in the future. His office staff is not closing up shop. They're still living at his legacy. And I think it's very important. And if I can help them continue to live that out, or definitely relay the messages of things that he's taught me, that's very important too. But yeah, his biggest thing was just don't be afraid to share the journey. And that's something I tell all my students as well. If real estate's going to be your big dark secret, what's the point? I mean, you can't do much being a lone wolf, especially in today's age where, your network is so huge. we're back when I was growing up in high school and college, there used to be this Kevin Bacon factor, right? Where we're all kind of 7 levels of separation from Kevin Bacon, or from him to other actors or something like that, right? So, but now it's like, man, it's like 1 level or 2 levels of degrees of separation from almost anybody with some kind of a common interest. So it's just crazy how connected we are.
Right.
Yet we're kind of disconnected, especially in these times. So.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you were able to have that relationship and kind of learn from him. And before we move on to to the next portion of the podcast, is there any do you have any messages or any main message you'd like to share?
Just in general with your audience, I think if you're listening to this podcast, you're definitely doing the right thing. I mean, you're educating yourself, you're filling yourself up with the knowledge and maybe some encouragement that you might need to take that first step or do your first deal or your 10th deal. And it's at the end of the day, I find sometimes people can get too paralyzed with just the analysis paralysis, and just like I'm a fact finder. I've literally taken personality tests, and I'm a fact finder, true. But I also want to make sure that I have systems in place. Hey, if the deal is good enough, if it checks all the boxes and the numbers make sense, you got to put the offer in. You got to pull the trigger. And lots of times you can make the deal even better by negotiating, different terms and whatnot. So you got to take some actions. Don't be afraid to actually put offers in. Make sure you have an escape clause. I mean, at the end of the day, deals just aren't going to be presented to you on a silver platter. I mean, you got to go out there and work and get them done. So, I see a lot of people that just absorb all this information, but they never take action. So don't be one of those chronic, information learners. You create your wealth by actually taking steps forward every single day. It doesn't have to be big, massive steps. Lots of times we look up to these social media guys and they're like, wow, I want to be like Gary Vee, or I want to be like, some of these big giants out there. But, hey, what's Gary Vee's message? My first tweet only had 6 likes. We got to start somewhere. All big things start small. So it's important.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, I believe that having a coach will really help you get over that fear, because they've been through it so many times, and what seems like a huge mountain to you is something that you will overcome and look back at and think, wow, that really wasn't that serious, and I'm glad I got over it. But if you don't move forward and you allow fear to take over, then you'll probably live with a lot of regrets.
Big time, right? And really, what is fear? What is fear? Typically, we're afraid of things that we don't know. So we're afraid of the unknown. And what mentors and other wise people in the world can help with is helping you with that vision of what it is going to look like in the future, or giving you the confidence to have that vision in your own head is so important. Because at the end of the day, that's why I say mindset is always number one, and that's why I'm literally writing my book on mindset. Because if you don't believe it in here, nothing else is going to happen. And being a former high level athlete, I hate to keep referencing it, but when there's hundreds of pounds on the bar, my best back squat was almost 500 pounds. Deadlifted 505 and put double body weight over my head back in the day. So if you have any doubt, whether it's whatever sport you might play, you're going to miss the shot. So you have to have that confidence. You have to have recreated in your brain so many times that future realization of it happening is already there. It's already done. So, when you're not afraid anymore, when you just could say, hey, it might be uncomfortable to get there, but I'm not afraid. That's such a huge relief for people when they have that confidence and they're brought together with another network of other people. That's why, all these meetup groups I think are fantastic too. And they're still happening, virtually, and even podcasts. I mean, this is like a community of listeners that listen to these types of things. I think it's so important. It'll help get people, if they just see, oh, so-and-so did it, then I can do it too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm nobody special. I didn't come from a lot of money. My parents have never funded any of my deals. I've had to, stand on my own 2 feet at a young age, and everybody else here can do it too.
Mm-hmm.
So even Donald Trump's kids, he's never just given them everything they've wanted. His message has always been, give them something to work with, but don't give them everything. Give them a good education, give them great connections. Give them a little bit of capital, but at the end of the day, give them the wisdom and the knowledge. But hey, they got to go out and stand on their own 2 feet.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, that's awesome. And one last thing on that, and then we'll move on. I'm realizing that even if you have a coach, you're not going to get all the answers. There's still going to be a bit of unknown, but you got to just move forward and figure it out as you go, and then have that support, and it'll work out, I'm sure. So Just wanted to throw that in there before we get into the random five. So
Sure.
I'm
I'm looking
gonna,
forward to this here.
yeah. So I don't know. You said you've listened to some of the other episodes. Every episode has different questions, so these are totally random. First thing that comes to mind. Number one is, who's the greatest living musician?
Greatest living musician. Wow. I've always been a big fan of, I guess U2. So U2 were pretty iconic when I was growing up. U2 and Pearl Jam.
Cool. That's awesome. All right. If you could time travel, where would you go?
I could time travel. So any place in the world or any time in the world?
Anytime, any place.
I would probably like to go see the Rome Empire back when that was being built.
Cool. Is there any particular reason?
If you've ever been to Europe, I mean, it's just amazing what's been created over there and how it's stood the test of time. It's funny. What was it? I'm trying to remember the name of it in Rome, but they're like, literally, we lost the recipe for this cement for years, so it just wasn't the same, right? It was, it's just crazy how things were handed down generation to generation. Sometimes it skips generations, or it got lost and it got found.
Yeah.
So I just think it's, when you go over there, it's a different world, and I can't wait for international air travel to start up again, because it's so rich in culture, and things are just done so differently over there.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I agree with you. All right. If you could be a cartoon character for a week, who would you be?
Wow, cartoon character for a week. Well, my kids, I have 4 kids under the age of 8 right now.
Yeah.
And they're all loving, being superheroes and stuff like that. They were literally just watching Iron Man last night.
Mm-hmm.
But, probably, I don't know. That's a good one. Maybe Superman. Superman always got the job done, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. And number 4, who would play you in a movie about your life?
Who would play me? Yeah, I've had different people say that I remind them of different things. Some people say I remind them of Ben Affleck from the Boiler Room. But great question, man. I'm sure there's an actor out there that could probably do my job, but
Yeah.
They'd have to be true blue and hardworking and care about people, for sure.
All right, let's go with Ben Affleck, because that's the first person you thought of.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And what success principle do you live by?
The biggest success principle that I live by is that, success isn't owned, right? It's rented. So every single day you got to wake up and put in the work. Hard work, as long as it's focused and, clear on what you're doing, everything requires effort. It just requires the right amount of effort. So don't be afraid to work hard in the direction of what you want to achieve. Mm-hmm. And everybody has another level. So always be reaching for that level.
Right. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I think that covers everything. Do you want to share how people can reach out to you and what services you provide?
Sure. I mean, I'll just, say like, hey, I'm pretty easy to find. People can find me on Instagram under my name. It's Kory with a K. And I'm sure you'll put some links and whatnot for people to be able to find us. But I'm also on Facebook too. I've got a website. It's just my domain. So KoryMackinnon.com. If people are interested in talking, they can submit an application to chat. And I do work with people one-on-one for 6 months, 12 months, or even beyond that. But otherwise, I'm also going to be starting up my YouTube channel and lots of other great things here in 2020. So I really appreciate the opportunity here to speak to your listeners. And if I can help out in any way, by all means, let me know.
Yeah. Have you released your book, or is that still in the works?
Book is still in the works. We're actually going through the second round of editing right now. And I kind of changed the flavor of the style of the book. I wanted shorter, punchier chapters to, appeal more to the millennial generation. Because I knew if I wrote chapters with big, long, heavy, a book with big, long, heavy chapters, it probably just wouldn't get read. So I want something that's very easy to be a page turner. So you'll see that this year too.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks. Is there any final words from you, or are we all good?
No, I think that's it, man. Again, I just wanted to appreciate you and your time here and reaching out. I know we've been in touch for a while now, and just don't be afraid to take some action. Like it's there's a lot of people that go to these events and whatnot. And they stand on the sidelines, and at the end of the day, the best way to learn is by getting on the field. And you learn a lot in university or college, but you learn the most from doing an internship, right? By actually getting the practical experience and full immersion, right? The best way to learn something, even if it's a new language, is to go visit the country and don't speak English if that's the thing you're not trying to speak. So you'll learn by just getting on the field and fully immersing yourself and going all in. So it's pretty tough to get to second when your foot's still on first. So
For sure.
But hey, man, I can keep giving these deep, profound answers all day. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And we'll have to do it again sometime. Maybe we'll do version 2.0 sometime.
Yeah, it sounds good, Kory. Thanks a lot. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Likewise, sir. Take care.
As always, thank you for tuning in to this episode. I hope you got something good out of it. I wanted to offer you a free report that I've created just for you as a listener. The report is The Beginner's Guide to Real Estate Investing, and hopefully this will help you identify what type of properties, what kind of investment properties would be suitable for you. And you can download it by simply visiting www.welloff.ca/guide. Again, welloff.ca/guide. Enjoy, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.